Good evening. This is the May 9th, 2017 meeting of the Open Space Committee. We are being broadcast live this evening, and since we have no one in the audience, except for our TV people, I'm assuming no one else is making a copy of the meeting. So, I'm calling the meeting to order. I have officially 6 o'clock. The next item on the agenda is the minutes of the meeting. I did finish the April 3rd minutes, which I just gave to the planner, and he'll kindly distribute them for me prior to the next meeting, and I will finish the March 6th minutes also. I know we have a very brief meeting tonight, 45 minutes ahead of the Selectmen's meeting. So I think Mr. Benoit would like to talk about the intern issue, wouldn't you? To get that, I know we're kind of skipping, but I know you wanted to get that covered.
Sure.
Want to talk about that now?
Yeah, if you'd like.
All right. It's under discussion items.
Okay. So I met with a Westfield State University student last month who was interested in doing an internship here in the town of Auburn. As you guys remember, last year I had an intern from Westfield State that worked a little bit on the analysis of town land for the dog park.
Right.
Now, what I was thinking with this intern, who will be in a completely different situation, this isn't going to be an accredited internship, it's not going to be a paid internship, he'd strictly be volunteering just for the experience. So, if in fact that does happen, I recognize this as an opportunity based on his background and interests to perhaps implement some of the goals and strategies of the open space plan. So what I printed out for you folks is sections 8 and sections 9, which is the goals and objectives, and I can read them off. And just curious what the committee's thought process would be on which goals might be a decent project that we can at least get kick-started through an intern. It's not something that I think would be moved towards or towards completion. It's just at least something that would kick-start an initiative.
How much time do you anticipate the person having here? Like 2 months?
It would be throughout the summer, but I'm not sure how frequent.
Okay.
So I was thinking about picking a couple of options, whichever one was
So the person might not be here every day?
Correct.
Okay.
We were a little spoiled with Miss LaFrance last year, who was putting in 30 hours a week over a course of a month, so she can get it done in a shorter frame of time. That's not what we'll have this time, unfortunately.
Okay.
But what I did was, I thought goals, or goal 1 and the objectives in goal 1 are very, very standard, and I'll just read them for the record anyways. Goal 1 is to protect town's water resources, the purpose of drinking water supply and recreation, considering both water quality and quantity. Particular emphasis on the town's well fields and the recharge areas and the water bodies that may have recreation potential, and to raise public awareness of the importance of these resources. Some of the and these are the very generic ones, so I don't see these as the first option, but ensure Auburn does not grow faster than its ability to supply municipal water services to new development. Establish a position of conservation agent to enforce the town's environmental quality regulations. Investigate potential funding sources for the purpose of land acquisition around water sources, and increase the level of protection afforded to wells, aquifers, and watersheds. In my opinion, the 4 of these are a little too generic or for an intern to focus on, unless it's in regards to objective number 2, which is to establish a position of conservation agent. Perhaps you're looking at researching other towns to see what they have for a position, what areas that they cover, what hours a week they work, something like that, to give us at least an analysis of the area.
Could you maybe have the person, like protection of the water and different testing and stuff maybe?
I think those specialist things through the chair might have to be contracted out, but
Okay.
when it's an agent for that matter, this should be to assist with town projects, but not only that, the enforcement and enforcement orders for ongoing violations in town as they would come up. Instead of the process now, if there's a wetlands issue, our staff has to go directly to the chairperson, who would then respond directly to the site, review it, and see if it warrants an enforcement order. If there was a conservation agent, they would take over that responsibility. And I think that's one of the more demanding pieces of that position, because that would require hours, and complaints come in every day, whether it's wetland related, building related, or whatnot, and having a person that's staffed, whether it's part-time or not, or subcontracted or whatnot, it certainly would help, rather than to rely on, and no disrespect to Mr. Garland, he does a great job responding to these things, but as a volunteer, it necessarily shouldn't be his responsibility to handle day-to-day complaints. It should be something that an agent could handle.
You know, putting my Conservation Commission hat back on, and also having Mrs. Downey here, who's still on the Conservation Commission, I have to tell you, you know, I was involved in the original master, because these goals were in the master plan too. But of course, I'm a bit jaded because of my conservation background. I was reading these last night, and I'll tell you something. I advocated for a conservation agent from the day I got on the Auburn Conservation Commission. We always wanted one. There's always been a need for all the reasons that the planner has said. You know, and I always thought, I don't think that we would have a full-time person, but even if we shared resources with another community. I mean, there are towns out in the Berkshire Hills, in the little hills, the little hill towns, that have a conservation agent. And this community with so much development over the last 25, 30 years doesn't. It's just a challenge dealing with conservation issues. But that being said, so of course I'm jaded on that, but I did want to talk to you before, and I appreciate you reading them all, Matt, but trying not to be selfish from the conservation standpoint. Because we have the Open Space Committee, I'd kind of like to, and I know Matt's I hate to have you read all of it, but, you know, I'm thinking more, maybe we should be spending our resources on something more town-wide, something more oriented to open space. I know a lot of the committee's interested in recreational opportunities. There are goals here about expansion of recreational opportunities, in inventory of the needs of the different types of recreational opportunities, the fields that we have, the condition that they're in, what might we need in the future. And there's also, something I've always been interested in personally too, is the exploration of the land trust, working with other land trusts in the area about trying to find ways to see if they can help us to acquire open space. That was just my feelings on reading through it last night. Because would I love to have the intern do the research on a conservation agent? Absolutely. But I was trying to be more broad-minded from the committee's point of view. I don't know what you all think, and I just, since it came up as discussion, I just, what do you guys think?
Maybe think to stay on the. But what fields we should rest and keep going? And it'd be nice to have some bike trails too, walking trails. And those are coming, but
yeah, there are some of those coming, but there's something we're working on. And some of the things as you read through here, you'll see that some of the things we've actually accomplished, like the town taking over the golf course. That was a goal mentioned in 2 or 3 different sections in here. And then some of the development of the fields. I mean, but the town golf course was a big one.
Yeah. That's right. There's a couple of them through the chair, and forgive me, by reading the conservation agent one first, that was not my one recommendation. There's several here that are very good. I just hit on that because it was goal number 1, but
because it was the first one.
Yeah, and you're absolutely correct. The golf course one was accomplished. There's perform a feasibility study for community center. We just did that through the downtown initiative.
Yep.
There's one item in here that says expand the existing walking trail at Pappas Complex. It's currently going to be before
and that's
the
something
commission.
that's going too, right?
This Wednesday. So there's a handful of things on here that are either completed or underway, and I think it's certainly good to point that out also. But I just want to be cautious with the level of research that we're going to possibly task an intern with,
right.
Because we're still going to get intern quality analysis. So I'm going to be able to keep this at least engaging for the intern to be volunteering their time rather than burying them into law or research. So I'm trying to, just why I'm kind of reaching out to the committee for their feedback and suggestions.
Well, if there's no more comments from the committee, then why don't we just proceed with you if you want to read?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. So.
Goal number 2, those are mostly from goal number 2?
Yes, so a lot of the ones we just mentioned were goal 2, and that was the opportunity for the golf course. The one that Mark just mentioned, explore field use regulations and how they may be implemented, improve existing recreational facilities per the DPW Parks, Recreation and Cemetery Division Master Plan. Provide a wider variety of recreational activities for people of all abilities, including expanding opportunities for hiking, biking, swimming, canoeing, fishing, and bird watching. And 5, I consider active, is develop trails for both passive and active recreational use while precluding the use of trails for motorized vehicles. Improve accessibility of existing public open spaces to all segments of the community, including establishment of access easements, parking facilities, and trail systems. Now, I thought this one wasn't a bad idea also, only for the fact that we have a GIS mapping system that shows all of our parcels online. These could be examined by an intern to possibly show where a potential access way could be and what that width could be using some of the measuring tools on GIS. This might give us an opportunity to see which ones are actually, and we know what's landlocked or what isn't, but some of them might just have such a small piece of frontage it's not considered landlocked. So I thought that might be an opportunity also.
I think that would be a very valid thing, because as we've been going over town properties, we keep coming up against that brick wall of, it would be nice if we could get there. We can't. So I consider that a very valuable use of someone's time.
What's that, item number 6?
Yes.
And it's probably something that could be achieved in that period of time that you have.
Yes, through the chair, we have the inventory, we have a good bit of information that they can use as a guide while going through each of the maps.
Plus, they're all probably computer literate, huh?
Yes, this intern's actually a lifelong Albany resident too.
Oh, that's good.
Really?
Very familiar with the town, so.
But
Do
that's-
Well, that's a huge help, too.
Do you ever get like an intern during the school year, or are they just too busy?
It's typically a summer internship program.
Okay.
That during the school year, since we're not a paid internship, and
Yeah.
getting out of school at Westfield State to come to an
Too far
internship
away.
here in Auburn wouldn't work for most interns. So I typically see the paid ones during the year and then the credited ones over the summer. That's what I'm used to seeing.
About goal 3, anything in there?
So goal 3. The header for this is to continue the protection of valuable open space and sensitive environmental areas and the acquisition of undeveloped open space land for conservation. There's 8 objectives here. I'll try to graze over these, but prevent isolation of conservation lands through the acquisition of connecting corridors. That's making sure you have access to these things, one way of saying it. Preserve, this is a question for the group because I don't know where this is. Preserve the old growth forest in the vicinity of town-owned property on Prospect Street.
Street.
I'm assuming that's Granger Cliffs.
Yeah, that's
Or
what
the low-lying area that abuts the back of Park and Shop.
It's the property that the town acquired by eminent domain when they were going to build a high school up there.
Okay.
It's within that parcel.
Okay. I had a feeling, I just wasn't sure. Never heard it called the old growth forest.
Yeah.
Okay. Increase the level of protection afforded to critical parcels of open space. Establish a document management plan, catalog general inventory, forest lands, and public shade tree inventory. That's a requirement of the open space plan. It's one of the things we don't have.
What's that
And
again? I'm sorry.
it's an inventory of forest lands and public shade tree inventory.
Okay.
Interesting.
Is that just the type of, the variety of shade tree? It's not like the number of them, is it?
These would have to be trees located within the right-of-way or in parks, for that matter. I did a similar analysis, or at least a data collection analysis when I was in school at Westfield, and we were using a GPS to track where all of these things are, what they are, how tall they are, what type of tree it is. This was using a GPS with a backpack and a big antenna on it at the time, but it was that was so they could do their own inventory of public shade trees. But we don't have that sort of technology to send the intern on their way to gather that information. So at least not.
Plus we have
Not right now.
they call it, logging, no, I just had, part of the Townsend, part of the bad, lawn, what was it, lawn hog? What do they call that? Oh, the bad beetle that's eating all 8 maple trees in Worcester. Remember part of
Oh,
that
Oh,
section?
the Asian longhorn beetle,
Yeah.
talk about that?
Sure. Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. That was a threat to at least a lot of the section of Auburn, especially the northeast section where you
Part of
live.
Worcester line, yeah.
And I know we ended up taking some trees down and stuff, but I'm sure that affected a lot of the streetscape trees that we have. But even on our landscape plan now, we're not planting large trees in the right of ways or on the front of buildings anymore. So these aren't necessarily shade trees that are in our landscape bylaw. So I don't know. I wasn't real sure about that one, if it's a good intern project, because I think he'd be starting from scratch and a little disinterested in it.
Yeah, I don't think that, no.
Overwhelming.
Yes,
Something easy, I think.
right.
So you're focusing on ornamental trees in your
That's just
planting?
that's just what's in the landscape bylaw now
Okay.
for businesses and their frontage and their setback requirement to be landscaped a certain way. But a lot of those trees are not large shade trees. It's like flowering dogwoods and ornamental trees, like you said. So a couple other ones on here is identify and preserve vernal pools and other unique and special features in town.
That'd be too hard.
That'd be very hard.
I mean, you really gotta be skilled to do that.
Encourage the continued use of farmland for agriculture and acquire or preserve those lands wherever possible. It's a little comprehensive. Plan for the acquisition of private lands that have open space value to the town as they become available. Again, it's a little high level for an intern. Investigate opportunities to work more closely with existing local conservation agencies, Mass Audubon, Greater Worcester Land Trust, etc. It's a networking thing that once the intern's gone, that networking kind of dissolves, so that doesn't work. So,
Almost too complex for a summer project.
right.
Yeah.
So, goal 4. There's only 2 objectives, but the blanket statement is to work to preserve Auburn's historical buildings and sites for the future enjoyment of its citizens and to maintain a link to the town's past. Number 1 was compile a prioritized inventory of historic buildings and sites in Auburn that are worthy of permanent protection. And educate the citizenry about Auburn's historic buildings and sites. So,
That seems like a manageable task, in 4 weeks or something.
most of our inventory doesn't contain a lot of historic buildings that are existing in the register. I think there's 3 sites or 2 buildings in 1 site, but other buildings that might want to qualify for it,
Is that right?
I'm not sure where you'd start. It'd be starting with the Historic Commission and going from there, but I've never undertaken a task like that before. I'm not sure where you would begin.
Maybe that's too simple a project, huh? Goal?
I think it reads more simple than it is.
Yeah.
It's
Could be a lot of research.
Yeah, would be, yeah.
not only that, but a building that's been there for a long time doesn't necessarily maintain its historic status if certain building renovations have been done to take it outside of its original design. So then you fall into a kind of spider web of a bunch of intangibles that you might find with one property you don't find with others. But
Would they be working with the assessors department to find out when houses were actually built and then sort through them and see which ones have some historic?
assuming the data is, yeah, I see what you're saying, assuming the data is available, and it's also assuming the folks that are doing repairs on these houses have pulled permits.
Yes.
So you don't know what's been done without knocking on their door and walking in to see if they're interested in this. So it's, keep in mind, when you put a building on historic register, you're eliminating the ability to do a lot of enhancements to it because you have to maintain your historic facade. The person who owns it might not be interested in that.
The owner has to agree to that, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm curious why this item is in an open space plan.
Which one?
Goal 4. Historic buildings just seems to be not open space at all.
It also covers buildings and sites. I'm sure if any of those buildings are on large properties owned by the town, I'm thinking of the Goddard Monument, but
I mean, I can see that maybe a cemetery, a monument, something like that, but that's a site. It's land.
this may be a standard requirement of an open space.
I understand that.
I'd have to check.
Yeah.
I'm not positive. valid point. The goal 5 is 3 items. In general, it's increasing public awareness of the merits of open space preservation and conservation, keeping the public educated and informed. One of the items that Ms. Weston addressed kind of right at the beginning is work with area land trusts to develop information on conservation and estate planning for large stakeholders. That's kind of working with the private sector, though. Tax applications of preserving open space for all Auburn taxpayers and the importance of preserving sensitive environmental areas for the purpose of educating school-aged children. So it's a... See, I'm trying to avoid the public outreach component of the intern only because once that comes out there, then the intern's gone. It's no longer an intern project.
Right.
But
It's probably too much for a short-term project anyway.
so that kind of hits on both the other 2 items too. Work with the library and school system to disseminate information of natural resource preservation. Provide information to new and current residents regarding the town's various resources, open lands, recreation resources, historic buildings, etc. That's kind of what we do here by being televised. So the next section kind of goes into the 7-year action plan as to which of these goals we prioritize, whether it's year 1, year 7, and everything in between. But I mean, I got into a few of them, but I went back to those 2 items, the same 2 that we've circled kind of once already. Number 1, the conservation agent, and number 2, I apologize, it was
It was, goal number 6, I think, on the first page, wasn't it?
and it was goal 2.
About
item
the
6.
landlocked, or access land,
Yes.
accessibility.
Yes, accessibility to our open space. So I ended up going back to those 2 each time, and where I see a lot of these goals and objectives certainly helpful and important for an intern, those 2 stood out to me.
What was the second one in goal what?
It was, I believe it was goal 2 was item 6.
6, okay, yeah.
It's improve accessibility of existing public open spaces to all segments of
Yeah.
community, including establishment of access easements,
So
parking
the-
facilities, and trail system. That he's not going to be establishing easements, but be at least putting these things out on the map as to right,
So the
how we
other
can
one is
proceed.
goal 1, number 1, item 2, right?
Yes,
Okay, 2 and 6, okay.
but and it's just my opinion. That's why we have a committee. I was just curious what your thoughts would be.
Do you think you can probably do some work in the 4 weeks or 6 weeks that he's gonna be working on that project, on these 2 projects? Is that enough time?
I think it's reasonable to at least use the data that we've been using to examine the properties and find some that either have existing amenities that are underutilized, and if they have the frontage to be able to identify an area in which it could work. Now, some of these sites could have frontage, but that frontage could be a culvert with a drain on it. And from 30,000 feet looking down at it, you can't tell unless you go there. So that's part of the interns, and what interns would like when they're in school is to go out and be outside over the summer. So this will be an opportunity for them to review the sites in person as well.
It could also be onto on-ramp too, right? In the frontage. Someone can have property owner business.
On an on-ramp,
Yeah,
it wouldn't qualify as legal frontage if it was on a...
okay.
Not an on-ramp.
Okay, I was wondering. I was thinking the old Troma site.
They wouldn't get a curb cut for that, so there'd be no access. But yeah, there's those are the 2 for me, anyways. Just curious of the committee.
Sounds good.
And the intern would write a report at the end of the,
Yes, sir.
yeah. That sounds reasonable, doesn't it?
I think it does.
Yeah,
Who's gonna make
So-
it,
I just want to be clear, are we working on one thing or 2? We're working on just the one about accessibility to town-owned properties?
It's up to the committee, whatever you guys think. I'm kind of leaning on your recommendation at this point.
Yeah.
I can see actually maybe taking a bite out of both of these projects, because the conservation agent is something that I think is very important. And if we can get some more data on that, I think it would be useful. And also, the secondary one, or the other, maybe the main objective being access is also high priority. So, sometimes you get into this and you don't really know how quickly an intern is going to work and progress. But if somebody is really efficient, like on the access thing, and can make good use of the data we have, along with some, field trips, that could wrap up quicker than we think. So this could be an alternative, just to keep someone going. I would be happy with both at whatever level works out.
So would I. Do you agree?
Yes, you are.
Who's going to make a nomination or
Do we need to do that?
You
recommend?
I didn't hear what Alex said, I'm sorry.
wants to know if you need to make a motion.
To recommend?
We can make a motion if we want to recommend to the planner that those are the projects we want to work on, we'd like to see, or we can just stay with consensus, whatever. I mean, it's not like we're a regulatory committee, we're just an advisory committee. It sounds like it's a consensus of the committee that we'd like you to start with the accessibility point, and then if there's time to work on collecting some data about a wetlands conservation agent. Yes?
Works
Yes.
for me.
Yep, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Excellent, thank you.
All right, so does that address, what you would hope to accomplish tonight, Matt, as far as the intern project goes?
Yes, it does, thank you.
Okay, great. So it's about 6:30, so we don't have a lot of time. Going back to the regular agenda, did you have any board and committee updates that you wanted to give us?
Aside from the master plan committee is going to be having their presentation in about 40 minutes with the Board of Selectmen, if anyone's
Right, and that's on the
interested.
economic development piece, correct?
That's correct. Yes, and the
Okay.
consultant, Dan Hodge, will be making that presentation here.
Okay. How is the master plan coming along?
Well,
Overall.
with these grants coming to a close, with the Drury Square one being finished, the economic development one being finished, and the housing plan's going, I saw a draft of it actually
Friday?
tail end of last week, yeah. So if these things coming along, it's feasible for the master plan committee to be able to input these 3 sections and finish those 3 chapters of the master plan this year. So it'd be
That'd be great.
great progress for
Moving
them.
along more quickly than expected. Okay, so that's kind of the economic development piece along with the master plan
Yes.
committee where they're at.
Yep.
Okay.
Now, does the master plan go to like a public hearing, or open, they're all done, or how does that work?
I can't remember the process
Okay,
right now, but it does need a Board of Selectmen's endorsement before it transitions to an implementation committee. But I'd have to double check. I'm not 100%
Okay.
positive.
maybe a while probably, huh?
Yes.
So that's what they're hoping to get tonight, is an endorsement?
Not for this chapter. It's just to present it, take a Q&A, and then the master plan committee will kind of dissect which pieces go into the plan at a future meeting.
Oh, so the master plan committee itself has not seen this end product yet either?
Not the presentation. They've
Okay.
received the physical copy, but hearing the presentation sometimes is a little more helpful.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's good. Under discussion items, we've got these 3 items that are kind of continued items. I think we had decided at the last meeting that we were just going to kind of leave these open for the time being. We're not really at a point where we're ready to discuss a recommendation on South Old Road. I think our review of the town on properties is ongoing, and the maps of the neighborhoods is ongoing.
If I may, I just...
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. It's all right.
It's all right. Yes, please proceed, Beth.
Sorry, I
Yeah,
just
sorry
wanted
about
to mention, and I know we touched on it earlier, that the hiking trail at Pappas will be on the Conservation Commission's agenda this Wednesday. It'll be-
Tomorrow? I mean,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, so it'll be the first public hearing for that. And anyone's interested to tune in or attend, certainly appreciate the feedback.
Do they go in front of the planning board too?
Not at this point. I don't believe so. So there's no structure.
Okay.
Arrived, I didn't open it, I didn't have time to open it.
Is that a notice of intent?
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. Public comment, we don't seem to have any. The next meeting, do you want to try for the, getting meeting space is very, very difficult here. Do you want to try, we had agreed when we first started that we were going to meet on the first Monday of the month. And that way we wouldn't typically have a conflict with the Board of Selectmen, so that, because the planner is typically here for the Selectmen's meeting as well. So did we want to try to stick with the first Monday of the month?
I think that was working, it's just that because of town meeting, we changed it.
Yeah, I think that has worked out. We've had good attendance, barring poor weather.
Right, I mean, we had to cancel a couple times
Yeah,
because of the,
yeah.
the ice, but you can't help that.
But at least this has worked out, and I think we should try to do that.
I think it's good to be consistent too. And then you can all plan on your schedules,
Okay.
that the first Monday of the month is going to be for this. So why don't we do that? I'm not sure what the date is.
It's June 5th.
June 5th? Okay.
Are we assured of the meeting space then on the first Mondays of the month?
Well, I'm sure the planner will assist us in that
Should be good.
regard.
Same time?
6 o'clock.
Yep.
But it's a whole month to try to pull it together, so.
Yeah.
So 6 o'clock on June 5th will be the next meeting. I'm sorry, did you have?
Yeah, if, I don't know if it'll be possible, maybe you could have the student come in to meet us, maybe. Internship person.
I'd certainly try to do that if possible. Absolutely.
That's it. They could,
Yeah, that would be great if we could meet the intern. Correspondence, we don't have any, so is there anything else you want to discuss before we adjourn?
Not tonight.
Okay. All right, then is there a motion?
we're close to adjourn.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. Okay, thank you very much, everyone.